Good day, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the TARDIS. I know, it felt good now. Yeah, good.
You want to
Right. Sorry. Welcome everybody to the strategy and policy meeting of the 8th of July. Who can believe it's July already? Not me. Start with the whakatauki. Te toia te haumatea, which means nothing can be achieved without a plan, workforce and a way of doing things. Apologies this morning.
Jeremy?
Chairman McPhail is on leave, so and sorry, who? Oh, and such as apology. Also, somebody like to move those, please. Thanks, Councillor Rose, seconded Councillor Young. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you. Any further declarations of interest other than the ones that are recorded? We have no public forums, petitions and deputations this morning, so we'll move on to item 5, which is the confirmation of previous minutes. Somebody like to move those, please? Councillor Matheson, Councillor Morrison, any discussion on any of those, any changes, errors? I'll put that in. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Agreed, thank you. So I'm just enjoying my chair. But be desperate. Item 6 is the notification of extraordinary items, and there has been none. And I've had no questions sent to me. So we can move on to item 8, which is the chairman and councillors' reports. I don't have a report necessarily. So has anybody got, any councillors got any reports of anything they've attended? Oh, I don't know what you're going to say. So firstly, apologise for not making it to the marine science. I had some family things that look over, so I wasn't able to go for my day, but
thanks, Chair. Yeah, I had two things that I'll provide a verbal update on, and subsequently a written one. Not so get it all written down, but first to let you know that I attended the Making Good Decisions course recently, and just recently achieved a pass in that.
okay, well done.
And secondly, on Thursday last week, we're attending the New Zealand Marine Science Conference, which was hosted in Invercargill. Wonderful event, and great to see people from around the country and some international folks visiting Invercargill. Attended some sessions over the day on aquaculture, estuaries, fiordlands, policy planning and governance, and all of the direct relevance to Southland, of course. A couple of highlights, I guess, takeaway messages from that. A reminder of the interconnectedness of our land and coastal environments via freshwater, and particularly the impacts that sediment loss from the landscape has on the nearshore coastal environments. And also a reminder, I guess, illustrated by one of the presenters in the estuary session of New River Estuaries condition, and particularly changes in that post-2000. So I'll follow up with a couple of paragraphs in writing to a subsequent council meeting.
Great. Councillor Gibson.
I would like to express my disappointment with you, Chairman.
that I was meant to be the second to
Oh.
go to that meeting, and that I didn't want to spend the $400, but if somebody didn't go, I was happy to go because my niece was giving a paper too.
Oh, well, my sincere apologies. I was on my way there
That's right.
and something else happened.
So
So
that's okay, but yeah.
yeah, no, my apologies. Because it just didn't even, because it was the last minute. As I say, I was on my way. Apologies to Karen for that too. Happy to reimburse the council for the cost of the day I missed. Any other reports? Great. It takes us to 9.1, which is the Fiordland Marine Regional Pathway Management Plan Review. Dave, welcome you to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not quite sure how these reports work because Catherine, who's online, has done a lot of the work in putting the report together, and she is here to ask any difficult questions or answer any difficult questions. And I just want to acknowledge the work that she's gone into writing this report. I think I'll take the report as read, but I might make a couple of comments before we move on. It's about maintaining accelerating momentum on here. I think this project's been sitting around for quite a number of years, and basically it's been trickling along because we haven't properly funded it. And so that's what this paper's identifying, that we need some funding to get it done. Council's made the strategic directions decisions already. You made them in 24 and 25, and we've put them into the paper just to put a context around where we are. And staff within the resources that we've got have commenced that implementation. However, it's not going as quickly, we believe, as it should. And I think maybe it doesn't meet your expectations of the speed that it's going ahead as well. We have had an update. The optimum cost is actually not the 200,000 in there, it's 275, they're saying. But the additional money could be allowed within your LTP process if you wish to. We won't be spending it in that next financial year, but this financial year of 26, 27, we do need to find some money so we can get this project with some momentum. And I think the decisions that you make in that kind of regard will be done as part of your annual report when you actually get the final years. So the wording in here, I've worked with finance to, I'm sorry, it's not definitive about where the money comes from, but there's a number of suggestions of what we do. We think it's important with local government reform, possible amalgamation, that we actually modernise this. It's going to be a lot easier doing it in a stable organisation like Environment Southland at the moment than to try and actually accelerate it in a new organisation with the best intentions of the world. So we have a window of opportunity to try and progress this report or progress the plan as we have. And really, I think you know as well as I do why it's not simply, it's a very strategic project. It's not simply an environmental project. It underpins aquaculture, it underpins marine tourism, it underpins obviously the protection of Fiordland, and with your strategic decision to expand it out, particularly sensitive areas around the bottom of Rakiora and things like that. So I think that's all I really want to say. I'll now turn it over to Lucy to, if she wants to say anything, then Catherine, if you want to add any technical details.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, David, for introducing. I'll just add to a couple of points there in regards to the financing part. So obviously you've given us previous strategic direction that you wanted this to be a priority and that you wanted us to move forward. As David's alluded to, we obviously have been doing what we can with what we've got. Staff now identifying that they could use additional, and we need to bring that back to you in the detailed plan process. So if there's more than what's doable in the annual reporting way, then we'd look to the LTP for that additional resource. But definitely intending to get it done in the next couple of years before we transition. And so the report before you sums up where we've gotten to and what we've progressed since. So Catherine also might come and jump in there and add a support as well.
Catherine?
Morena, no, nothing to add from me, but happy to take questions on the detail.
You are unmuted, but
Might be our end.
Me now?
You can't look pretty either.
She is unmuted, but.
Yes, it's frustrating.
Click on, Catherine.
I'll get my phone.
Can you hear
Catherine,
me now?
and text me. Might put it in the
is there
chat.
anyone external, other external, to see whether it is Kathy's notice there?
Thanks, Catherine.
Nothing
Nothing to add, just happy to take questions, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Just noting, councillors, that there are 6 recommendations, so quite a list. I've got councillor Evans and councillor Gibson, yes?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I know we're now at another meeting where we're talking about this again and we're getting where we've got to with the money that's been allowed. Have we got a plan? Have we got an agreement? Have we got any idea of any project management? Have we got a business case? Have we got anything other than we've just got to a point with the money's run out? Because with a project, and we're all sitting here and we want to get it moving on, can I see a business case, a position, where it's going to be, what's going to happen, costings, everything else, for the money that we've invested in it? It would be good to have something.
If you have a look at your strategic direction, you put $80,000, I think, and that was to cover everything, your biosecurity, all your programs. And so this has been trickling on at about $3,000. We do have a proposal to put it together from a consultant who's been working on it in the background, but we've been limiting them, so I can certainly bring that proposal. I imagine when you endorsed it in the first place, and I'm sorry I haven't gone back and read that full report, that there would have been a business case of why you made a decision that you wanted to expand it out from just the Fiordland pathway. So I imagine that there was a business plan, but we certainly have. That's where I've got I just updated it, got it updated with the amount of resources we've got in-house and out, and that's where the 275,000 came from, was the latest update from the project plan doing. That would give you, and we could give you a timetable. I suppose the question I have is, do you want to try and accelerate this, or are you happy for it to just trickle on, but without any resources it's doing? But certainly I can bring you a project plan.
Through you, Chair, can I just add, I think just onto the point that the recommendation 6 talks about the need for us to actually articulate how we would fund the next phase. So the indicative numbers that David has put in both the report and is alluding to is an indicative one. It doesn't have that detail. It's got the detail sitting behind it, but that's not what's in your paper today. The paper is getting you direction on if you would like us to move forwards with it. We need to bring that back to you to be really clear about what you're getting for that money and how the project would then get rolled through. So I think that level of detail needs to come back, but I think it's covered in recommendation 6 in terms of what you were actually signing.
And recommendation 5.
No, thank you for that. It's just that, since that time, significant background work has been completed, including regional rollout and preliminary project managing and biosecurity act assessments and all that sort of stuff. I'd like to see a lot more of that, because we want to move forward, we want to get it going, but I want to see more of it. The proposal would be good. Has there been discussion with local businesses? Has there been discussion with local community? Has there been a lot of input put in by Te Marama? Where are we at? We need a line, so let's keep going. And I know that sounds like, I'm sure all the information's there. I would just like to see it.
Thank you.
Sorry, enough. Alistair can.
Councillor Gibson.
I'm as frustrated as Councillor Evans on this one. I understand, and can somebody fill me in, that there is a planned thing going out on Monday. Is this right, wrong, or indifferent? Can a plan to get this Bluff Hall thing done?
The Bluff Fallout is a separate project.
Understand.
That is linked in there. What you what's going is a detailed business plan has been developed.
Yes.
I don't actually know of anything that's going. I'd have to go back to Patrick. I don't know of anything specifically going out on Monday.
No, it's not going
as
up
far as I
today,
know.
it's in progress,
Yeah.
but it's definitely well on the way.
Yeah.
But this whole thing's been in progress since I came here, and that's 4 years ago.
But certainly,
All of it.
yeah, there's
And I'm
certainly,
still frustrated.
Councillor,
This- Sorry. And I'm still frustrated the same way as Councillor Evans. We've got to get something concrete and get it planned and get on with it. Because as you alluded to, that it's going to affect our aquaculture, it's going to affect all the things that are going to be happening out of Bluff. So let's get on with it.
and certainly we've made a lot of progress on the Bluff fallout, and we could actually bring you a report to your next meeting. Or I'm not sure whether it comes to this meeting or the ICM committee. I'd have to take some advice on that, but we can do that. That's been progressing pretty well. And you had funded in part, I think again, that had a separate funding of 80,000, I think, again, off the top of my head. And so that's progressed pretty well. Going to the detailed business case, because we have been having discussions with MB, and they're saying that they may, well, they've done something similar in Nelson. So we could bring that to an appropriate next committee, just to update you. And we have talked to some of our strategic partners on that, but again, in a confidential manner. And then obviously the last time probably I talked to you about it was we were talking about that agreement that was signed in, I think, 2019, and just where that's at. So, yeah, all that's been pulled together. So that's progressed quite well. I think these are two separate projects, even though they have a Venn diagram, they overlap each other.
Thanks, Chair. So through on the Bluff fallout specifically, so we did provide a verbal update to the last catchment management committee on the progress that we were doing. The project plan itself didn't come there, but the work that's happened in the background is we're handing over to Patrick to take point on the next phase. So we're making sure that we're doing a Treasury business case. We'll be supporting Southport with that process, building off of the work that we've been doing this year in terms of seeking additional funding from MB. So we put in a fairly light application to MB early in the year because they had some funding that was available in the RIF program. We took that opportunity, but since then we've been working with clients to make sure that we're scoping up what's needed. So it's been working in the background, but we've definitely not spent all of the money, and we've just been making sure that we are keeping it moving whilst we've been having those higher level conversations.
Thank you. Councillor Rogway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to take a slightly more positive approach. I know that the people are working on this, particularly Catherine, are very committed and very competent, and I think, and I have a lot of faith in this program to make good progress. I was on the commissioner on the hearing initially on the pathway plan, and some of the things that we identified then that needed improvement are listed there underneath the heading background. Greater alignment with neighbouring regions, and I see that's been occurring. That's really important to make sure that other regions have a method of ensuring that boats that leave their ports don't bring their exotic organisms and whatever to Southland. I see that work is going on there. The Bluff haul-out facility is really important, and as Dave has explained, work is going on there. Yes, I know that it's taken a long time to do that, but there are multiple parties involved, and it's difficult to get it to fruition, but I know that is happening. I see that where is it? Future work program, and the next steps is right down at the bottom. The next steps there. So there's 6 points there that work is going on. It includes the Bluff haul-out facility. I think that we're making good progress in this area. I know that staff with MPI and DOC have been going to Fiordland on a regular basis to check vessels and to make sure that any boat that is there complies with the requirements under this under the pathway plan. So that's all good stuff. Me and the staff and support the work they're doing in this area. So thank you.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Evans, did you want a second?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that part of the pathway plan, one of the major parts is the school health facility, and we've been discussing it for quite some time, is to make sure that we have good environmental outcomes for our coastal region and everything else as regards to clean health. It'd just be good to have more information on it, because we're getting overviews on it and we're getting risks and we're getting all of that sort of stuff in the report. It would be good as part of the recommendations to maybe say, come back to us with what was highlighted before the recommendations, a proposal, what work has been done. I know it says work has been done with Marama and all of that, but I'd just like to see more coming up as part of that, because I'm sure if we all sat around here, we go, yep, go for it. But we need more information.
Okay,
That's
thank
my point I'd like to make. Maybe we could change the recommendations, maybe we could add that to it, or just vote on what the current 6 recommendations are.
I think if I might, recommendations 5 and 6 will produce what you are requesting. That's my understanding of what those two we're enabling.
We have a timeline.
Through you, Chair, happy for us to bring that detailed reporting back through to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee in September, because that would be the committee that's more, if you're happy, setting the strategic direction, and then we bring the program reporting back through to the ICMC committee so that you can see how it connects.
Yeah, correct. So then
I'll move the recommendations.
thank you, councillor Rodway. Seconder for those recommendations. Thanks, councillor Pemberton. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Great, thank you. Yes, bring on that bluff haul out facility. Right, item 9.2 is the regional forum report, enduring intent and future application. Just before we go on to that, actually, it's very remiss of me to not have formally welcomed Mr. Stuart Bull back to the table. Great to have a Mana Whenua representative and Stuart in particular, who's been involved with strategy and policy for as long as I've been involved. So welcome, Stuart. Great to have a representative back.
Yeah, kill it. I'll just say, because been asking where have you been? I've been a bit of a review going on within the office of Mana and Papatipurunanga, so that's where I've been trying to sort through that. I'm a little bit like we're trying to sort through this stuff, so, but I think we've got it all sorted now. So kill it.
Right, no, we're really pleased to have you here. So, right, 9.2. There's quite a number of recommendations there, and you've had circulated the changes to the recommendations. Has anybody not received those, either in digital or hard copy form? They should all be there. Okay. If there are any alterations to those as we go, we can do that. Just welcome Rachel to the table, who's going to lead us into the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of background, as everyone around the table will be aware, work over the last decade and longer has highlighted a significant gap between the current state of our freshwater and the community's aspirations around that freshwater. In response to that, we had a partnership program running called People, Water and Land from 2018 onwards, a partnership program with Te Marama and Environment Southland, which did work around identifying those community aspirations and using the national policy for freshwater that was in place at the time, describe those and the contaminant reductions that would be required to achieve them. And then we had a separate work stream, which was the regional forum work around how to achieve those community aspirations. As you will all be aware, since late 2023, there has been a series of government announcements and legislative changes which have effectively put all of the regional planning pieces on hold, the limit setting process that's been talked about. But the purpose of the item today is really around going back to the regional forum work and looking at the enduring intent, what is relevant as we focus, particularly in the non-regulatory space in the coming months while we await the national or revised national freshwater policy, which is likely to be very different to what it was previously, and that will set the direction for all of the regulatory processes. So Council and its strategic thinking for this triennium has highlighted a number of areas for the Council to focus on, things like wetlands, the work that's happening in the Mataura, with the blueprint, those types of activities has been a key emphasis, and there's a lot of guidance and direction provided in the regional forums work. So what we're putting forward is that the Council, I guess, acknowledge the changed operating environment. The original report suggested that the enduring intent be endorsed. We're aware that there's still some feedback coming in from members of the regional forum, so proposing that rather than endorse the enduring intent, that the Council note the overarching intent, approaches and principles proposed by the regional forum remain relevant, and agreed that the enduring intent be used to inform a number of strategic processes that are underway at the moment. And there's a new recommendation added in about reporting back to Council on feedback received from forum members following some engagement with them planned over the coming weeks. So I'll leave it there, but that's just a bit of background.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. Since we last had a little discussion of this last week, I approached a regional forum member, and there's been some correspondence circulated to you all around views of where it got to, and it's particularly brought into focus the constrained outcomes with the National Policy Statement in Te Mana o Te Wai that didn't allow any debate really on those things they were given, and the draft freshwater outcomes were presented as a baseline and not negotiable. There were statements made that all the outcomes recommendations were achievable on the forum, and that was not the view of that person, as I was aware of. That's why I checked. And I guess another thing that came through was about the community values. The way that they were collected at the time was like a aspirational view with no consideration of what the costs or outcomes would be, and there were some strong concerns, but they were never revisited. So the paper presented to even on point 4 agree the enduring intent, so would see Te Mana o Te Wai and some of that high stuff embedded in things like spatial planning. And it's quite scary if we go there. I think it needs workshopped so that we understand exactly what we're signing up to before we move on this. This is a big thing for Southland, and we've got to get it right. And we shouldn't just wade into this. The implications of this still aren't clear, so take it back to a workshop.
Thank you, Councillor. Stuart.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, that point 4 was, I was just looking at that and thinking, the first line is really describes, to direct that the enduring intent be used to inform the strategic processes below. And I didn't see the need for the bottom line, because I just felt that was a bit of a hook that could hold the whole kaupapa up, and this David's really highlighted it for me, because and I think I've said it here before, is that we've been through that process, we've run that whole process, we've had the hui, the discussions, the feedback, and we've had final paper and report back to this table. And if we're just going to keep going, I'll say it, sorry, but I'll keep saying it, if we're just going to go round and round and not conclude any of this, then we're not going to make any headway. So and I'm saying that because I couldn't see, I think it's a bit of a hot to suggest it's subject to further engagement with the forum members. Well, you can meet them on the streets and that, but to start the whole consultation over again and suggest that some things weren't done or people weren't happy, well, I'm just saying, my understanding, and I was here and there involved with it all, I thought we'd already gone through those other processes. So, and this is not blocking us in, it's just saying that the enduring intent. So it's in the intent of that report that come to us. It's not saying that you will do what is described within it, but it's just recognising the intent of that process. So, kia ora.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillor Young and Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I was certainly one that was gravely concerned about that paper that was presented to us last week. So with discussions with Councillor Rose, I did send a text to Minister Hoggard on Sunday evening, along with that paper that we had last week. He phoned me on Monday morning. I was only able to speak to him briefly because I was quite busy with something else, but he did caution the council against proceeding with that because there will be changes both in the NPS freshwater and the new upcoming RMA bills. So look, I would concur with Councillor Rose that we probably need to workshop this. There's some aspects of the non-regulatory stuff there that we could proceed with. Certainly wetlands are one of them, but in terms of proceeding with this whole report from the regional forum, I'd be very cautious and wouldn't support it at all. But as I say, I think workshopping this would certainly be really worthwhile.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, look, I was very disappointed with what was presented to us, and then to find out that there was something else going on in the background, and that person was prepared to put it on paper. And you know, and when you look at some of these things within that report, it's not doable as it stands. And also, when I look at it, it said the community were engaged. Yes, they may be, but they were also swayed by the regulatory framework that was sitting behind it, and that the forum had to adhere to that regulatory framework. So in my view, I'm not terribly happy with what I heard, and I would believe that it needs to go, and we need to workshop it and see where we're going. We're not delaying it. We just want to be clear on what we're buying into. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Anyone else? Oh, sorry. Councillor Roy.
Yeah. Look, I think the intention is excellent. What worries me is that we just might not have a clear framework so that we don't have things happen that we don't expect. And if I look at where you've got risks and opportunities, I've spent a fair bit of my time dealing with unintended consequences. So I'm aware in things like animal welfare and environment, there are quite active groups out there wanting to do things. So I'm asking this question, what does intent actually mean? Because if we embrace this and someone says, ergo, therefore all nitrogenous fertilisers need to be banned, and take someone to the Environment Court or somewhere else and saying, this intent has been quite clear, and they develop from that. And so before I sort of say, hey, this is cool, I need to have a clearer understanding of what the intent might actually mean, and reducing the risk of having unintended consequences. I don't know whether I've said that very clearly, but I have spent a great deal of my time dealing with unintended consequences when the intention's good, but someone grabs it and steers it in a different direction.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry I missed the meeting that you had the other day, but I would concur with what Stuart says about that second line in number 4, subject to further engagement with forum members and pending national direction. When you look at the recommendations in particular, and I'm looking at these in the summary of the recommendations in Appendix C of the report that Phil sent out to us just recently. And so rereading this, I don't think that it's threatening at all. It refers frequently to farm management plans to achieve these goals. It doesn't say that we're going to ban nitrogen. It does talk about livestock intensity, but again, refers to the response within a farm environmental management plan. Nutrient management, again, talks about, defines a cap. We've already got a cap that the government's put in. And it again talks about environment management plans, and talks about soluble phosphate and nitrogen, once again, to be done in a sensible manner, measured and quantified. There's nothing in there that says, you know, that you're going to have to do away with these things or be too draconian. So I don't know if other people have read the report carefully and considered it all, but I think it's important to do that. And I think if you did, you would see that it isn't actually that threatening at all, but it does identify the things that we've been talking about for many years that need to be addressed. And so I would be happy with the change that Stuart suggests to the recommendations. Having a look at the others there, number 3, context has changed, council. It's still the overarching intent is appropriate and is relevant. Is take out that second line so that number 4 just reads agree that the enduring intent be used to inform the strategic processes below. And the last one, report back to council on feedback received from forum members, including any recommendation refinements. So I don't see that as a particular problem, although, you know, we have had the recommendations be done very thoroughly. The people that were involved in the regional forum were a wide sector of the community, including farming groups. So, yeah, so I'd be happy with the recommendation change with it by taking out that second line before which starts subject to further engagement. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I've stored that away, but I'd like everybody to have their say first. Marcus.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just a bit of clarity around process. So just thinking about those bullet points under 4, particularly around the long-term plan, spatial plan, and combined planning process. There is a number of democratic processes that assist those documents to get through the system. So particularly with the long-term plan, effectively the regional forum will be one of the pieces of information that will assist in developing the long-term plan, and those other plans. There will also be the national direction, the legislative requirements. There'll be some decisions around this table around budgets and work programs and what that could look like. So it is not the one and only thing. It will be one of a host of things that will assist decision making around those decision points around long-term plans. You know, what's achievable, what's palatable, what can we afford. All of those decisions will form part of that context to inform the direction of the long-term plan, and also the regional plan and the combined regulatory planning documents too. There'll be all those sort of decision-making points as we go. It's not necessarily saying that the regional forum is the only source of truth. There's a whole lot of other context. So just want to clarify that procedural process around those documents moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
I think from what I've what I've heard and what I understand, and I've talked to a couple of regional forum members as well. People's positions around the table would indicate that potentially being workshopped again so there was a better understanding would be quite valuable. I certainly do agree with that. And an understanding of relevant to the table going forward, considering context that we're potentially operating. So, yeah, that's just my point.
Thank you. Stuart, I have got you, but I'm going to go to John first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess my understanding and my position on this, I guess, is, you know, if we look at our vision around a thriving Southland, and we are in a place where our decision on land change actually isn't even playing, you know, we're handcuffed there by central government. So I'm concerned we're putting too much weight on this is going to decide everything that we do in this building, and it's going to flow through the regulation tomorrow. I think we're overthinking. I think we're at a point where we're talking about leading with hearts and minds, and if we don't have something aspirational, where are we going? Because the reality is regulation is doing the minimum standard. So this is more around a mindset than this will determine how our regulation is. So I'm concerned we are overthinking this. I do agree. I've been trying to get the regional forum back in for a number of years now, more as a reciprocating some respect from council around the work they've done, and actually helping us understand more, as a number of us councillors weren't here when the regional forum was deployed by this council to go do their work. So mine's more around engaging in conversation rather than trying to change what they landed on for the recommendations. And I just want Southland move forward on this stuff. We, to Stuart's point, we have a habit of stalling, and it's only when we get a shake up from Wellington that we seem to be activated to do something. I just don't think we've been genuine to our ratepayers. Leave them there. The bell curve's getting flatter of late around people's performance on where their environment responsibilities lie, and I just want to keep that bell curve moving forward, and we're going to be relying on Simon Stokes and his team to make that happen. And I think this stuff helps them give them directions to where we think they need to be operating. So that's obviously the non-regulatory stuff. So thank you.
Thanks. I've got a couple on my list, but they're second bites at the cherry, people. So if there's anybody that would like their first bite at the cherry, I'd quite like to do that first. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, I could just perhaps offer a couple of notes of explanation. I thought when I suggested a statement of intent or an enduring statement of intent that it might help. And on the basis I offered that because the regional forum report is 95 pages long, and I thought it might just help to extract from that in 2 pages what is the essence of the intent. The reality is we can scrap and not even have an enduring intent statement. We can go back to the regional forum report and deduce from the introduction, the forward, etc., what that intent is. It's in the original report anyway. If the enduring statement is considered unhelpful, we don't need to go there. We could accept recommendations 1, 2, most of 4 without the enduring statement of intent. So it was offered simply as a 2-page resource rather than asking councillors to trawl through a 95-page report to understand the essence of what was being suggested. And I guess the reason why there was an interest in making the report accessible was for probably about the 70% of the recommendations that were non-regulatory in nature, that were agnostic of policy settings, that could be considered for investment in our annual and long-term plans, regardless of the policy settings, because we believe that wetlands are likely to make a difference in our environment, that community collaboration on some of these challenges makes sense, that there's an opportunity to partner with others as we understand and explore what the appropriate solutions might be. So I just wanted to put that in perspective. The regional forum
report could deliver that intent function. It does deliver that intent function regardless. And it was always ever an advisory report. It was never an intention that that forum report would override the judgment expected to be exercised by this council in determining where to invest, who to partner with, how much attention to give to freshwater reform. So all I would acknowledge is that if the intent statement is unhelpful, I'm certainly, as a regional forum member, can say, please refer back to the original report if that's appropriate or seen as more palatable. The point I would make is that there was a considerable amount of money invested in this process. Yes, the policy settings have changed. I totally agree and acknowledge that, and that's why the intent statement was perhaps offered to enable us to still refer to those non-regulatory options that have been identified in the report.
Thank you. Roger, sorry. Councillor Hodgson, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, I concur with much of what Councillor Roy, Rodway and Morrison have said. I'm quite comfortable with the intent and the outcome, and I guess frustrated to see that there might be further delays that could occur when this could be productively used to contribute to developing proposals in our long-term plan, and acknowledging that those would subsequently be decided on by this council. So I think one of the key strengths of the process, multi-year workshops, was that it included stakeholders from the rural sector, agricultural producers, from mana whenua, from other aspects of Southland community. It was a really diverse group that came together and produced a joint set of recommendations. And I think that we really, out of respect to that process, should be looking at how those recommendations can be brought into our annual plan. And I will reiterate, I said earlier that, and as Marcus illustrated, that this council will make final decisions on funding of those going forward. And that may, I guess, ultimately result in a greater emphasis in adaptive management. So, look, I'm here to move that amendment.
Councillor Evans has contributed.
With the suggested change to clause 4.
Okay, can we just hold there any changes to the recommendations until everybody's had a say? And I note that Councillor Evans and I have not contributed yet, and we've also got some people who want a second opportunity. So, Councillor Evans, have you got anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm just hearing from the rest of them, and we will decide once there's a finality on the recommendations where we head.
Just for my part, want to highlight the difference that we need to keep in mind, I think, between the pending national direction as stated in recommendation 4 and the non-regulatory intent of the bulk of the regional forum's work and advice. And if we look at the agenda on page 19 and the purpose, the why, I think that it says it very clearly for me, to restore and sustain the health and resilience of freshwater and estuarine systems in a way that reflects an integrated catchment management approach, which is what we have all agreed and set up our internal systems for, supports thriving environments, tauranga species and resilient communities, to Councillor Pemberton's point, and enables intergenerational wellbeing, which I think to all our points actually. So I'd really like us to think about this intent being the non-regulatory things that we can signal are important to us, there will be national direction that we can do nothing about, as we've already seen. We've had to stop work because of national direction. So I think it's really important that at this stage that we separate those two things, and that the regional forum's advice to us gives us an opportunity to clearly state part of our strategic direction, but a very important part of our strategic direction. So, and to the point about delays, you know, I don't want to kick the can down the road any further either. So if, in fullness of the rest of this conversation, we decided to amend recommendation 4, I'd be a little bit concerned, because I think we need to have that engagement with forum members quickly, partly to acknowledge their work, which we've been trying for some time to do, but also to get the new state of play for them. But I'd like that if we do that, that needs to be quick soon, and that will allow the further conversations that many of you are seeking, which I think is really helpful to improve or increase everybody's understanding of the non-regulatory space that we can work in. But important that we get that done quickly, otherwise we are kicking the can down the road. And it'd be really helpful to be able to be really clear about our intent, given that the system that is going to take over, potentially there'll be some new body that takes over our work. Really important that we embed some of this so that it can't be sidelined or ignored. So those are my thoughts. Now, I completely acknowledge that we've had suggestions of changes to recommendations, and I've also got a couple of people who'd like to speak again. So what I would like to do is hear from those people again, and then go back to if there is a need for any alterations to the recommendations. But I'd like to hear from those people first. If you're okay with that, we'll do it that way. So on my list, I've got Stuart and Eric. Stuart, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. You basically stole my thunder on state, because I was going to make reference to the why was the intent. And if that is not truly our intent, as is written here on this page, and we have no intention of following that intent, or the why are we sitting here, then why are we sitting here? So yeah, I don't need to think of it. I just want to reference it's just sitting in front of us here, what the intent is on that report.
Councillor Roy.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things I was wanting to achieve was to close down the opportunity for litigation about this with the illustration that I gave. And I think we've done that quite clearly, and I thank councillors for their contribution. And the discussion around the motion is as important as the motion if you get into a litigation situation. So I want to just refresh us all on what we've said. We see this as aspirational. It's non-regulatory. It's about better practice. It's about engagement, and it's an advisory report. And we need to note that in this discussion so that it does eliminate that litigation opportunity that I presented beforehand. There's a possibility, and I'm aware that there are people considering that sort of an approach. So I wanted to shut that off, and I think the discussion we've had has been excellent.
Thank you, Councillor. That's very helpful. Councillor Gibson.
And to follow on from that, we got sworn at Southland Regional Council by the politicians that are going to make these decisions about what we've done with our land and water plan. I want to avoid that happening again, because it's embarrassing totally and non-helpful to anybody. And that's why I wanted to see the thing actually workshopped again, so we don't have that happen.
Can I just clarify with you that the workshop, my understanding of recommendation 4 is that subject to further engagement with forum members, that would be a workshop style thing. So I just wanted to check that my understanding is the same as yours for that.
Yeah,
And
I'm happy with that.
okay, great.
But I don't want to see us get back into, it was in private, but you don't like getting sworn at. right?
No,
It's like getting, sorry.
none of us do. Because there are other ways. Okay, councillor Rodway, and then we might.
A second opportunity, and others as well, but I'm not sure if there's a need for that subject to further engagement, because when you look down at under number 5, it says advise regional forum members, etc. Then it says seek feedback on how the proposed enduring event has been captured, offer an opportunity for engagement with council. So that seems to me to be covered by that clause or phrase that says subject to further engagement with forum members. So it's a little bit redundant because it's captured further down. But I suppose that could stay there because that's what the rest of it proposes to do. I'm not happy with and pending national direction because that's far too vague and we don't know what's going to happen there. We should definitely leave those 4 words out.
Councillor Rice.
Thank you. I still have concerns with this. On the values thing, I have been on the other side. I remember when we talked about the values, there was a lot of fluffy engagement that had no outcomes. And at the time, we wondered what it was, and then we said, well, it needs to be done again. I know that happened within the forum, and it was never revisited. And it was a done deal. All of a sudden, there was a bit of a thing, and then you couldn't go back at all, and you couldn't actually have a wider engagement. So something that seemed not that important turned out to be a one-way door, and I am still concerned that if we take the enduring intent of this in spatial planning means limit setting, and the limit setting out of this meant that didn't matter what you did, a good management practice, that wasn't enough. Everybody said non-regulatory. Well, actually, I did have a read through bits of it last night. They're modelling 25% of sheep farms going into forestry, all berm land being retired, stock reduction 10% from dry farms, 20% from dairy across the board by 2035. Yeah, I'm scared about that this gets locked in and that all of a sudden we've taken Te Mana o Te Wai as a base. Even though it's been thrown out nationally, that puts the environment above all else without looking at any economic value, which the other forum member that I circulated also felt was a problem. And that a workshop would help us debate these issues properly because we haven't got time today. So I still want a workshop, and I do not want it being locked into things like spatial planning, that we hear that we've already made that decision. So that's where I come from.
Next, Councillor Pemberton, and then Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, fair point, Councillor Rice. My question would be how much has gone already into trees, and with new consents rolling, we're looking at 10% reductions of nitro and dairy farm anyway. So the stuff's already happening. So and that's in regulatory, not in clean. So once again, I see this as a storm in a teacup weather because we're already on that pathway and it's happening at other levels outside of the regional forum. I think the challenge will be working with the science for outputs, not inputs, and that was probably one of the more challenging spaces for the regional forum. But since then, there's been a lot of science come through, and as I said, with experience with catchment groups, we're seeing opportunities with what's coming through, that it's not as scary as people when they see these numbers, that throws them, but it's actually already happening. Consents in Southland, consents in Canterbury already have to have a reduction on what you're doing the year previous term of your consent. So kind of already entrenched. So I don't unless we're going to try and reverse all that on top of this,
Thank you. Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, no, if I could just comment, acknowledge that the values work was done by a separate group to the regional forum and was delivered to us. Your comments, David, I suspect you must give us some credit for, as a forum, collectively exercising judgment and interpreting and balancing that particular input along with all of the other inputs that we received over that time. We didn't accept those values carte blanche without critically engaging with that material and considering how they might influence our recommendations. And I think it would be quite disrespectful to the forum members if you suggested that they didn't exercise any judgment in critically accepting those values that were presented to us. So that would be one observation. The things that you've quoted from in the report were from an appendix around research done by academic institutions, tracking what might be considered as best practice for ICM. Those were not recommendations that the regional forum suggested, and were never part of they weren't reflective of what we believe were limit setting recommendations, regulatory limit setting recommendations in Southland. Even setting that aside, limit setting is not something that we imagine this regional forum can actually even proceed with at this point, because national policy provides the framework within we must work. So, yeah, I mean, the intent is intended to release the potential in the non-regulatory recommendations. We can't move on limit setting. That is not an option we have in Southland at the moment. That is prescribed by national policy and will continue to be prescribed by national policy unless they delegate that to us at some point in the future. So yeah, I just wanted to point out that this is not about limit setting, and neither is about recommending that those best practice features that the academics have identified as possible from 2035 onwards are the recommendations that we should be pursuing in Southland. To claim that those are recommendations on a regional forum would in my mind, be scaremongering in this context.
Councillor Gibson.
I'll be very quick. I'm disgusted that basically when you look at the limit setting on nitrogen, that it only applies if you've got black and whites. The cropping farmers can pour on as much as they like, and the rest of them can pour on as much as they like. So it's just, we've got to be very careful here, I think, which worries me.
Fair to say it worries all of us, Councillor.
It's not square across the field.
Yeah.
It's not regulatory.
And if I could be so bold, I would suggest that the limit setting conversation is not this one. It is a conversation that we, as Councillor Morrison has reminded us, is going to be thrust upon us, but I'm not sure that this non-regulatory conversation is that one. Last one, Councillor Young, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, after listening to all these discussions here, we do need to come up with some sort of a recommendation or plan going forward. And I'm still not totally happy with what I see on here. So look, if we're going to, and there does seem to be a bit of agreement around engaging with these regional forum members, and so I would certainly suggest that if we're going to do that, we do it in the form of a workshop where they in there for a certain amount of time, and then we can discuss recommendations from them afterwards. The other point that I would like to make that has been missed is if we're going to proceed even with some of these non-regulatory aspects of this intent, is how do we communicate this with farmers? So we certainly, because farmers are a big part of the whole land and water forum, and so we certainly want to get them well engaged and have them on board. The last thing we need is throwing something at them at the last minute and getting them back up, and they will just revolt on that. The other issue that I'd like to make is that it's not all about farming. Of course, we do see that Invercargill City Council has a consent to discharge sewage for a certain amount of time every annum into the estuary here. So we do want to be mindful of those aspects. But look, at the end of the day, we're one community. We need to work together and come up with a plan. So it's my recommendation, if I could, is move that we hold a workshop in the near future with some of the regional forum members that can be there, and we can discuss this non-regulatory aspect of it going forward.
Thank you, councillor, and that for me is part of recommendation 4. Unless anybody's got something new to add, I'd like to move through the recommendations one by one at this point. Would somebody like to move the first recommendation, which is to note the work and recommendations? Thank you, councillor Roy, seconded councillor Gibson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Agreed. Recommendation 2, acknowledge that the operating, regulatory and reform environment has materially changed since the forum published its final report. Thank you, councillor Rose. Thank you, councillor Young. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Agreed. The slightly amended recommendation 3, note that while the context has changed, council considers the overarching intent, approaches and principles proposed by the regional forum, the enduring intent, remain relevant. So we'd like to move that, please. Thank you, councillor Morrison, seconded councillor Hodson. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Yeah.
Yes.
Carried, but not agreed.
Did we get that recorded?
And if you wish.
Thank you.
Gibson and Young. Recommendation 4, agree that the enduring intent be used to inform the strategic processes below, subject to further engagement with forum members and pending national direction. Work programs underpinning the 2026-27 annual plan, development of the 27-37 long-term plan, regional spatial planning processes and regional combined plan processes, Environment Southland's input into the Southland local government revitalisation investigation. We have a move for that, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to propose an amendment to that motion.
Sure.
I'd like to remove those words "and pending national direction" because that would mean that we wouldn't be able to do anything until forever. So changes all the time. So what's important is for further engagement with forum members to get on with it, as we've said, and as John said, these things are happening at a high level, and we just need to get on with this stuff. If we include "and pending national direction" in there, we are not able to do any of those bullet points.
Councillor Hodson?
We have to wait until we get further national direction.
Yeah, this council's responsibility is to work with the law and statutes as they're written today, not pending national changes. If there are changes in the future, then they may have a material impact on the work that we're undertaking. So with that in mind, I'm happy to second Councillor Rodway's amendment.
Okay, we could have a discussion on that amendment now, thank you. So
I'd like to see, well, I don't know whether we need it in there, subject to further engagement in the form of a workshop with the forum members. Need to go that far?
No, I don't think so, actually.
Okay, as long as everybody's
Because it's
here.
well recorded that that's the intent, really. I've used the word intent again. Is there any discussion on Councillor Rodway's amendment to remove "and pending direction"? I would perhaps say that subject, if
Notwithstanding.
Or it could be guided by national direction, could be.
yeah, because it's subject to pending national direction.
That's a given.
Yeah.
You don't even need it there, it's going to happen anyway. Sorry.
We've got no control over that.
Sorry, so if there's no discussion apart from that, I'll put that alteration to the recommendation, which would be removing and pending direction.
National direction.
Is that your, yep,
That's 4 words.
okay, so that's the amendment to the recommendation. I'll put that now. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Agreed. So the recommendation now then is agree that the enduring intent be used to inform the strategic processes below, subject to further engagement with forum members. Okay, so Councillor Rodway is putting that recommendation rather, seconded please. Councillor Gibson, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
Agreed. Carried rather, sorry.
Right, with one.
You want your name
Yeah,
recorded,
please do.
councillor, thank you. And recommendation 5, agree that staff progress next steps to formally advise regional forum members of the above, acknowledge the enduring nature of their work and thank them again for their contribution. Seek feedback on how the proposed enduring intent has been captured in this item and whether members have any further reflections they would like to provide. Offer an opportunity for engagement with council and report back to council on feedback received from forum members, including any recommended refinements to the enduring intent. We have a mover for that recommendation, please. Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Seconded. Councillor Morrison. All those in favour? Oh.
In that workshop, are we involved there? Because it says here report back to council.
Yes.
I don't think we need to include that, Madam Chair, do we?
Because we're going to be involved, I thought.
Yes.
Through you, Chair, it was really more if there was forum members that couldn't attend an engagement and provided some written feedback to make sure that we reported back any other feedback that was received.
Yeah, I think it's important that it
Yep,
stays there if you don't mind. So, you have a mover and seconder? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Great. Thank you. Great. Thank you, councillors, for your well thought through and as Councillor Roy says, candid contributions. 9.3 now, the good news, the better news. Welcome to the table, Chris and Karen. Super El Nino. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is an item for your information. So I'm sure by now you will have heard in the media plenty of stories about the Super El Nino that is being predicted, arguably that we're currently starting to be in. So this paper is to explain what the consequences of that might be for the Southland region and the work Environment Southland is doing in preparation for that. I'll take the press read and we're happy to answer questions and provide further explanations as needed.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Pemberton.
Yes, thank you for the report. Yeah, look, it's been such like I've been going on about this since the summer, really. I guess my question was around correlating flood events and what catchments to what years we see these large El Ninos being my understanding every El Nino is slightly different, so it's not quite as easy to say an El Nino means exactly this. And obviously there's been numbers thrown out there around 70 and such likes, and I don't quite understand how we can go that far forward. But do we have correlations of our flood history overlaid over top of El Nino, so we get a little bit more of an understanding as to what challenges we might see in the community?
Yeah, so with the analysis that has been done here, we've used those 5 examples of large super El Niños in the past. Now that's a very small number we're using for statistics, but essentially we've taken the monthly values and where they've been below the value of 1.5, we've drawn that limit. We've looked more at flow percentiles rather than flood events because they're so discrete and they don't always happen in those years. In fact, we've had some of those super El Nino years where we've had droughts. Yes. But the general trend is there is more rainfall during certain months, particularly during February, and we tend to have larger single events rather than rain spread out, more likely to result in higher flows. Which is why we see an increase in that top percentile. And it might seem like a small increase to go from 1% of the time to 2.4, but that does create problems on the ground.
You can have a follow-up if you like.
I guess I'm just trying to find a way that we can illustrate this a little bit more in layman's terms to the bulk of us so we get a head around that. So my pick up, you're saying is 2.5 times 4% chance of a flood if that's 2.5 versus 1%.
No, it means that if you were to take the flow record of we only had a limited data set because we had to go back into the 1970s. So it's just a handful of flow sites. If you take their data set and the top 1 percentile, which, for example, that might be 200 cubics for a large river, whereas a large flood might be 2,000 cubics. But in order to get enough points to make statistics, we have to bring that percentile down. And so that 1% of time that it spends above 200 cubics, that would now be 2.5% of the time that would spend above. It's extremely difficult to make meaningful statistics from such a small number of events.
Just trying to make it relatable.
Yeah, it's a real challenge to do that.
Councillor Evans, then Morrison, then Matheson.
Thank you, Chair. Just for you. Thank you for the report. Very interesting reading. Sometimes it's worth stuff, but I'm pretty sure you've used good basis for the information that you come out with the results for this. But there must be other parties that are interested in information like this, or even have information around this sort of stuff. To that, I would suggest already be someone maybe would offer to share information, or will they not really be in the play at all?
We do get data from Meridian that we can use, but fortunately a lot of those locations where we get that data from, they're managed by big lakes and big flood events. They get dammed out.
No, what I was trying to say was, no doubt, large people will be looking at information regarding El Nino as well, forward producing opportunities for the water.
Through you, Chair, I think you do raise a good point that there are probably others that are looking at this, particularly for how it will impact their operations. I think we're still at the early stages of how this event might unfold for us. And so I guess we're trying to get in early in preparation. And as winter unfolds further, and particularly as we get into spring and summer, that's when we'll start to have some of those closer conversations. As Councillor Pemberton alluded to before, these are pretty hard to predict, and what's happened in the past isn't always how they will play out now. So it is a case of just keeping a bit of a watch and brief, because we know that sort of spring, summer is probably when the effects will be furthest from normal for us. So that's the periods that we're particularly keeping a close eye on.
and sorry, just to keep going on, supplementary to that as well. We're looking at our region, we're looking at our regional ways and everything, whereas someone like that is looking at regional areas and power production and everything else. And we've seen with the last few days where we've seen some weather events happen up the East Coast, predicted to be in Dunedin, but ended up being higher up the East Coast and everything else. So it'd be quite good to work with them. Whether it's achievable or not, I'm not sure. Sometimes it's a matter of getting on the phone and bringing someone. But it would be very beneficial if we could share information with them, because at the end of the day, we might have dry periods where they've got wet periods in the Waitaki area where they're sending power down to here to supplement industry in our region instead of getting it from our region, if you know what I mean. So I know we're looking at our region, it'd be good to look at it overall as well, nationally through other regional councils and big players. Thank you.
I understand NIWA Earth Sciences now, but they did quite a bit of work with the generation companies around the IPO, the tidal oscillation, and they found that when we're in that phase, that they get about 12% more on an annual basis, which creates quite a bit of power generation. So there has been quite a bit of work done in that too.
Thank
you. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. Super El Nino. I'm just wondering if we also, from the engagement I had with emergency management in Southland, perhaps wonder if we should be also promoting the idea of being super prepared for a super El Nino, in terms of prompting folk to consider business resilience, household resilience, community resilience. I'm wondering if there's potential to benchmark and borrow from other regions in terms of the ways they might be communicating this message, or the messages associated with building resilience and preparedness ahead of an event like this. And indeed, we might consider who are the different messengers that might be useful, because it may not be best coming from us. It could be Thriving Southland, it could be Emergency Management Southland, there could be other groups that help communicate the messages that are considered appropriate around people preparing and building resilience into the systems ahead of what could be a challenging period. So just some thoughts on that if got time.
Through PE, so we talk regularly and closely with our counterparts across the country. The one thing I would flag, so we'll take that suggestion and take it forward. The one thing I would flag though is that most of the rest of the country are preparing for droughts. We're in a slightly opposite situation along the West Coast. So the nature of our preparedness looks slightly different compared to any of our colleagues.
Maybe it would be, I know Kaikoura is not Southland, but so yeah, I guess it was the ways of communicating or the stories, the way the storytelling occurs that finding out those that are most engaging that people are most likely to pay attention.
Councillor Matheson.
Well, it's actually pretty much been answered, to be fair. I suppose one point, Chris, and thank you guys for John's, you had that discussion around 2.5 greater, so this around frequency. But actually peak would be higher, I would imagine as well. Would that be the case or not?
There wasn't enough data to be able to do that for those 5 events that were mentioned. In fact, in some cases, we could only do 4 of those events because we went back to 1972 and a lot of our flow size didn't extend that far.
So would it be fair to say it's supplementary, Chair? So it'd be fair to say that peaks potentially be greater, but they just can't be predicted.
That's correct. Thank you. It's not possible to until we get more data.
Thanks, Gus. Just a quick one from me. Internally, how do we apply this kind of information to our own operations as far as the work that we've planned, catchment management or floodplain management? How does it manifest itself through to our own work?
So through you, Madam Chair, is touched on to some extent in the paper, but certainly compliance are looking at this, looking at how they might handle a particularly wet spring and summer. And we know from a couple of years ago that can make quite a big impact, particularly to some consent holders. I believe the catchment ops teams, Lucy might want to speak to this, are also considering what impact that might have to their scheduling as well. But I guess it's a case of being prepared, but not this is not predictive yet. So not necessarily assuming that it will play out.
Yeah.
So we just need to be ready, but not but ready for multiple options, I guess. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of business continuity, etc. Lucy's nodding. Any other questions?
I've just got a comment.
Oh.
From Riversdale South and East has got no problem.
Tumbleweeds are not soggy.
Yeah, not soggy yet.
Somebody like to move the recommendation? Thank you.
Motion to receive the report.
Thank you, councillor Evans, seconded councillor Hodgson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Okay, agreed. Thank you. We've still got quite a bit to get through, so would you like a cup of tea?
I think that's a good idea. That's a good
idea. And can you do that? Be back by 20 to 12, please. 12 minutes. Thank you.
Making a coffee break.
Yeah, that's right.
There's two people, because your name's over there and you're there. I look at the name, go, oh, somebody's missing. Oh no, there he is.
You're good to go.
Righto, folks, we'll get back into it. Thank you.
I can throw it.
Submissions on the conservation reform. Thanks, Shana. Right, take us through that, Shana, please. Or is it you? Yeah, good.
Today I'll provide a brief update on the two draft council submissions relating to the government's proposed conservation reforms, the Conservation Amendment Bill, and the National Conservation Policy Statement, or NCPS for short. I'll begin with a quick update on the process. So staff delivered a presentation regarding the key proposals and implications of the reform at council workshop held on the 18th of June. And draft submissions were subsequently provided to all councillors for review and feedback. Since then, the Select Committee has extended the submission deadline for the Conservation Amendment Bill from 2nd of July to 13th of July. As a result, staff now have an opportunity to seek feedback on the draft submission of the bill. The attached submission, therefore, is still in draft. The submission deadline for the NCPS was July, but was also extended to 2nd of August. So following today's discussion, staff will finalize both submissions and lodge them before their respective deadlines. The timeframe provides for the lodgement of submission on NCPS with the formal approval from of the full council meeting of the full council, while retrospective approval will be necessary for the submission on the bill. Turning now to the reforms themselves. Overall, these proposals represent a significant shift in the way conservation land is managed. While they aim to improve efficiency and modernize the system, they also provide a stronger emphasis on enabling development within the conservation estate. Council's submissions acknowledge the benefits of a more efficient system, but also identify several important risks. From a governance perspective, there are concerns that greater centralized decision-making and fewer opportunities for local input could reduce council's ability to influence decisions affecting our region. There are also implications for treaty partnerships, with proposed changes potentially reducing the practical influence of iwi and hapu in conservation decision-making. Operationally, increased activity on conservation land may place additional demands on responsibilities, including biosecurity, environmental monitoring, and nature hazard management. The two frameworks have different areas of focus. The Conservation Amendment Bill focuses on the legislative and governance framework, while NCPS is more focused on the implementation of those frameworks in practice. Across both submissions, a consistent key message is that reform should improve efficiency while not compromising conservation outcomes or local. So for the Conservation Amendment Bill, I'll take you through some details about the content of the bill, the submission. Council broadly supports the intent to modernize the legislation, but considers that a number of important amendments are required before the bill gets finalized. In particular, the submission seeks to ensure that conservation remains the primary purpose of the Act, and that community and regional voices continue to be reflected in the decision making, and that environmental safeguards remain sufficiently strong. Key issues raised include concerns about increased ministerial discretion reduced roles for conservation boards, stronger safeguards around land exchange and disposal, effective monitoring and compliance for concession activities, transparent use of visitor levy revenue, meaningful engagement with local government, and ensuring treaty principles continue to have practical effect in conservation decision making. For your information, I'd like to note that the Minister for Conservation has confirmed that the provisions relating to land exchange and disposal will be removed from the bill. Turning to the National Conservation Policy Statement, Council generally supports the proposed simplified planning framework, including the move to a national policy statement supported by area plans and visitor zoning. So that is the current direction of travel. It reflected in the council draft submission. However, the submission recommends refinements to ensure the framework remains flexible enough to respond to local environmental conditions and is supported by robust scientific evidence and aligns with regional council responsibilities. Key recommendations include retaining flexibility in area plans, strengthening biodiversity information, and applying a precautionary approach where evidence is uncertain. Supporting streamlined approval pathways for appropriate activities, including various statutory responsibilities this council currently undertakes in conservation estate, and ensuring adequate monitoring and compliance, and strengthening the evidence base that underpins visitor zoning decisions. In summary, both submissions support the overall direction of improving efficiency and modernizing the conservation system, which has clearly been supported by internal experts that we have as well. However, they also emphasize that these reforms must continue to protect conservation values, maintain meaningful local and iwi involvement, and provide sufficient safeguards to manage environmental and operational risks. If the chair allows, I would welcome.
Thanks, Sharon. Councillor Pemberton and then Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, look, thanks for the report. Just sort of, I guess, standing back and thinking about it, what is our role currently? And I guess you look at the visitor levy, and we've seen how cruise ship levies have worked for us. So I would suggest that maybe that levy would go to whatever the current roles, potentially TAs for infrastructure support. But my question is, are we actually going to be looking at targeted rates for pest management and catchment and river management, being that depending on what parcels of land are moved around or how this is structured, it gives us an opportunity to work through some of the challenges we have within the community as DOC at the headwaters. I guess the Makumira Headwaters Group report, Catchment Group, was quite a good one to expose, challenges around pest management. Actually, the natural state of the waterways isn't quite where it should be, being that we have these introduced pests that are always been managed of all parcels of land at DOC and little pockets around the communities, which I suspect they'd be the ones that we're looking at first, not national parks. So, yeah, just to make sure that we have our role and our funding clear as to how we see it playing out to best deliver for the community.
Thanks, Councillor Rose, then Councillor Evans.
Yeah, I guess following on from John's point, on page 42, you make a comment, ensure that excess charges complement rather than replace existing conservation contributions made by tourist operators and other users. And I thought about the cruise ships in there and wondered if we would lose that income and where it would go, and maybe we need to make a point about how we use it for coastal activity. Just if that's what you're getting at, because that's a substantial amount of income and a resource for dealing with coastal issues.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, there's a bit of community concern regarding the conservation reform. It's more about revenue reform funding reform than conservation. And there's quite a bit of community talk around if you want to have a new form of revenue through the conservation land, then the Department of Conservation are the wrong people to do it. So it almost needs to be two separate organisations. One with regards to business activities within the conservation land, and one that focuses on conservation. Because currently there's been I understand through talking to some people, there's been a real curve upwards on staff in office roles percentage compared to on-ground roles. And I think the concern is it's going to take away from our conservation and our environment by focusing more on business activities and revenue funding ideas within conservation. So there is a big community concern around that. And you've sort of said it all even in some aspects, but it is a big push.
Councillor Rodway.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, no, I just wanted to support the submission generally, but specifically about the land exchange and disposal proposals. And I note that strong concern has been expressed about that. There's a lot of dock land on our river margins, particularly the upper reaches of the rivers like the Reti and the Mararoa and the Whitestone, that is either marginal strip or stewardship land. And there might be a strong push from some people to have that land sold, so it could be farmed. But these bits of land are beside the river. Not only do they provide public access, but they provide protection and a kind of a subsidy against other land development in other parts of the catchment. So you can have high intensity use in one area, but you need these other areas where there's low intensity land use to maintain water quality in particular. So I'm concerned about that in the future, and I'm very pleased to see that this council has made a submission about that, because that needs to be protected.
Thank you. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. Great submission on the proposed changes to the Act or the reform of conservation. As I was engaging with it, I was reflecting on one thing, and this was the potential for cumulative effects over time to flow from these changes, cumulative effects that may not have been captured or anticipated by the folk designing the policy, but could potentially spill over or be downstream effects that end up being a cost that we carry in Southland, or that Southland ratepayers carry. And whether it's catchment management, biosecurity, natural hazards, additional environmental monitoring, visitor infrastructure, or community resilience, there's a bunch of things that probably have not been analysed in detail or costed out what the flow-on effects throughout the system are. And I'm just wondering if there was potential to add, if time allows, to the submission, perhaps a section on a whole of system implications. And I think this would just be encouraging, perhaps, encouraging government maybe to consider adopting a monitoring framework that not only looked at conservation outcomes, but considered the cascading or spillover effects on the system, so that over time it becomes apparent that it was a well-intentioned change. Who knew it was going to impose such an additional burden on a particular region, other local government element. I'm happy to share some thoughts on what that might look like, if time allows, but if the window of opportunity is closed, I wouldn't go.
Wilding Pines is a good example. Yeah.
Chair, we were well aware of that aspect and that there were various comments in the submission, but more than happy to use that section.
Councillor Hodson.
Well, thank you for the thorough report and draft submission to date. I certainly support Councillor Morrison's suggestion there, particularly given Councillor Rodway's comments around the existence of stewardship and marginal strips, throughout our river corridors, and aware of the systems interaction with our integrated catchment management, floodplain management responsibilities. I've got a question about the appendices, which I see are partially populated, and just wanted to get clarification whether there's an intention for those to be fulsome in terms of identifying all threatened species in the southern region, and then secondly, I guess the tables are around population on conservation estate, and I guess flagging that there may be some other things that pop up there without seeing them that are of particular pertinence to the organisation's operations.
Chair, use the rough state of the appendices. So that is, I guess, that reflects our attempt at striking the right balance between having detailed in the submission and being targeted and efficient with our businesses. But we will, if the council agrees, we will try to build in those detailed tables and present them in a way that will support the existing arguments in the submission, including the effects of the cumulative effects on the region. With the appendix one, the intention was to visually demonstrate the potential impact on threatened species without providing a full list, unless you believe a full list will be
Councillor Young, then Councillor Matheson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, just one or two comments. I would concur with Councillor Rodway here about the marginal strips and stewardship land. But the issue with stewardship land, as I understand it, is that it's neither within LINZ or DOC. It's sitting there in limbo, as you might say. Some of that stewardship land should certainly go to DOC, and it's an area that hasn't been tidied up over the last number of years. Some of it came about through tenure review, but there's also other areas that it's come through. But certainly protecting those headwaters of the rivers would be important, but DOC do need to get on and do something with a lot of that stewardship land. So if we could make reference to that, perhaps it could be really worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the report. It's just good to see you supporting the principles of Treaty of Waitangi in here. I see quite a bit of commentary around the associated risk with watering down in section 4 out in the public domain, suggesting obviously that some of those principles around treaty actually help to reinforce the protection of that conservation estate. So yeah, it's good to do that. Submission here. I don't know whether there's any opportunity to reinforce that or not.
Councillor Hodson.
Well, thanks. I was following up on Councillor Young's discussion around stewardship land, and point of clarification on that really, that my understanding is that stewardship land is conservation stewardship land. It's managed by the Department of Conservation under the Act, and can have a number of different ways that that's managed. Some of it may essentially be unmanaged. Some of it might be under a grazing lease, a community management agreement. So yeah, my understanding is that conservation stewardship land is just that. It's conservation. It's Crown land. It's managed by the Department of Conservation, as opposed to hydro managed by LINZ.
And perhaps managed might be in inverted commas in some cases. That's the problem. The only thing I would add is that the VAAs are a real concern to me, acknowledging that some designated places where tourism infrastructure could happen is not, in theory, not a bad idea. But the ministerial discretion for that concerns me, as do the, to Councillor Morrison's point, the kind of flow-on effects of that development over time. So if we can strengthen, my colleagues with approval, of course, strengthen our concerns about that, I think we have Milford directly in mind, front of mind. Thank you. That's great. We've had a really good opportunities to discuss the bill and policy statements. So it's a bonus. Can I just remind us though, thinking back to a conversation we had a while ago at council, I think, about the timing of some of these submissions, just wanting to remind everybody that Shana's already given us a heads up that one of the submissions is going to be in retrospect because we can't get it through a council meeting in time. So when you're asked for feedback any further, that's your opportunity, because the shift of the deadline has meant that it's pushed it outside of sequence for us. Just wanted to draw that to your attention. So we are aware.
Well, on that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation, but it does imply here that further adjustments could be made. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep. So Councillor Morrison's ideas could possibly be incorporated.
Yeah. And that'll come back to us, right?
So in proposing and moving this one, I think we need to look at item 2 because there's a word missing there.
Yes.
Should be review the submission and make any changes to it.
Yep.
As meeting or something like that.
We need to put a committee in the Captain Field committee.
Yeah.
already been changed.
Yeah. I've already acknowledged that with staff. Thank you. So with that wording correction for recommendation 2, you're moving all through.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Young, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Agreed. Thank you. I meant to say before actually that it was a bit sad that Chairman McPhail's not here because he missed the opportunity to talk about the interdecadal Pacific Oscillation that he's worked so hard to master. 9.5, Wallaby strategy review. Yes, no to wallabies, that's all. Nicole, take us through, please.
This report presents the submission Environment South have lodged on the review of the Aotearoa New Zealand World District. Some of you may remember we workshopped the review and our proposed submission in June. At that workshop, councillors were generally supportive of the proposed direction and suggested a couple of refinements, including strengthening references to the importance of early intervention using wilding pines as an example, and placing a stronger emphasis on the need for ongoing investment in detection, surveillance and eradication tools. Those suggestions were incorporated into the final submission that was lodged. Because the submission deadline was 30th of June, there wasn't an opportunity to obtain formal council approval before lodgement. To ensure Environment Southland's views could still be submitted on time, the submission was lodged on a without prejudice basis and signed by Chair McPhail pending formal council endorsement. Retrospective approval will be sought at the next ordinary council meeting. I'd also like to note that the version of the submission attached to the agenda does not include the disclaimer that was added prior to lodgement. That disclaimer acknowledges that the submission reflects the direction provided through the council workshop, but remains subject to formal council approval through our normal governance processes. In terms of the submission itself, the key messages are largely the same as those discussed at the workshop. I'll do a quick run through of these.
So although wallabies are not currently established in Southland, we remain at risk from spread out of Otago and South Canterbury. From our perspective, the most cost-effective approach is keeping wallabies out of Southland in the first place, rather than dealing with established populations later. The submission supports the long-term goals of a wallaby-free Aotearoa and recommends that eradication remain the clear objective of the strategy. It also supports maintaining the current focus on eliminating all individual wallabies at the range edge, continuing to investigate all sightings, maintaining effort in Otago, and continuing investment in detection and surveillance capability. One of the key concerns raised in the submission is the suggestion that future effort could focus more on breeding populations rather than individual animals. Our view is that given how difficult wallabies are to detect at low densities, a single wallaby should effectively be treated as a potential breeding population until proven otherwise. Once wallabies become established, they become significantly harder and more expensive to remove. The submission also notes that increasing costs as populations get smaller shouldn't necessarily be viewed as a sign of inefficiency. In many eradication programs, including wilding conifers, the last few individuals are often the hardest and most expensive to find. That's the simple nature of eradication, and reducing effort too early can undo years of progress. Overall, the submission advocates for a strong precautionary approach that keeps the focus on eradication and minimises the risk of wallabies establishing in Southland. This brings me to the end of my report.
Thank you, Nicole. Councillor Roy.
Yeah. Look, we've workshopped this. In the interest of time, this is a very accurate reflection and well-written report. I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Roy. Seconded, Councillor Rose. Do you have discussion? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that's right, we have, and I agree with the intention, but could I ask about how that can be achieved? I note that wallabies in South Canterbury, they have made their way over the Waitaki River around about Kurau in particular, possibly over one of the dams or the bridges. So they are in Otago at the moment, and they don't swim across rivers. So having them stopped at the river, haven't managed to do it on the Waitaki, but they could have if they prevented them from getting over the bridges and dams. On the Clutha River, we have a number of dams and bridges as well. And I wonder whether if this council in discussion with the Otago Regional Council has thought about methods of stopping them from getting over those bridges. That's the main way they can get over by themselves. And then, of course, we occasionally hear about people that might be transporting live ones, but wallabies are not really like pigs in that they are not really very edible. Not many people like to eat them. So people's reason for doing that might be mischievous rather than anything else. So I think those are the two things that we need to think about: stopping them getting over the Clutha River, working with the Otago Regional Council, and making sure that there are sufficient penalties in place for those people that might want to bring them in for whatever reason. So my question is, Madam Chair, are those things in place already? I know this is a submission, but the practical thing we should be doing as well.
Madam Chair, the fire security team is in contact with Otago, so I'll go talk to them, see if those are in place.
Yeah.
Lucy's.
Yeah. Printing. Yeah. How stopping them getting over the.
Yeah, Kia ora. Thank you, Chair. So I don't have an immediate answer for how we stop them getting over the bridges, but I would say that the biosecurity team are working really closely with our colleagues in Otago and in Christchurch as well in terms of making sure that we've got a whole of the South Island approach. I'd suggest it's probably worth us connecting that question back to something that Councillor Pemberton and I have been talking about, which is a workshop for the Integrated Catchment Management Committee to talk about the future of pest management as opposed to Nick's wonderful paper on the actual strategy itself. So happy to bring that through though, Councillor.
Thank you. So we can get an answer back. So that could be our question, to get an answer back from the staff about how to manage those.
I'm looking hopefully at Rebecca, Chair, that she's noted the question, and then I'll make sure that
And we've also
have
got
answer to it.
Item 9.6, which is the biosecurity strategy.
Indeed.
Right, next.
Councillor Gibson, just quickly.
I guess, Nicole, and I'll be very quick. Can we join up with Otago and go up there with our guns and keep them out of this place? Because that's the cheapest way.
We'll let you know when they're coming.
Yeah, I know, but you
Chairman
only go
fail,
up there
Mike.
weekly.
So again, through you, Chair, yes, maybe not the gun part, but yes to joining up. And again,
Eradicate.
yes, so yes, we are joined up in terms of the operational delivery part as opposed to the, but we also are joined up in terms of the strategy and policy part as well. So, yeah.
Because I'm totally overcome by their reproductive performance if they can shoot out the 3,500 off them off one station and they're still coming.
Thank you, councillor.
Thank you.
Cheryl. We do have a motion on the table to receive the report. So without any further discussion, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Carried, thank you. Little did I know that wallabies were going to be coming. Such a thing, having watched an item on 7 Sharp just recently.
Biosecurity.
I'll tell you about it later. 9.6, the biosecurity strategy.
Fairly straightforward, Madam Chair. Strategy is recognising biosecurity goes way beyond the region, and it does put some emphasis in working with our neighbours. Their biosecurity is our biosecurity, basically, and so you will see that being strengthened in there. We're actually putting emphasis in there on strong relationships, both internally in the region and externally. Doesn't introduce any new rules, doesn't ask for any new funding. It just provides a strategic direction, and that'll help underpin when we do our regional pest management plan review, plus also our submissions when we make submissions to Otago, etc. We think biosecurity is becoming increasingly important. Climate change, increased movement of people, goods, emerging pests, risks facing Southland are only increasing. We also believe the strategy, probably a lot of it needs to be managed on a bigger area than the region. Certainly couldn't be managed on smaller areas than the region because those risks go way beyond. Pests don't know what boundaries are, if that makes sense. Wildings is just a good example. Marine pests, etc. Basically, wallabies. We've talked about wallabies. If you need any more, Rebecca will answer those questions. But we think that again, it's a timely to put the strategy in place as you're moving forward into potential new structures. So, Rebecca, what would you like to add?
Just to note that we've got an updated cover page with the image, and there's a few other typos that we've tidied up.
Thank you, team. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Robbo?
Madam Chair, under the heading key changes in the biosecurity strategy, 25 to 30, there are 7 bullet points. And the last one says greater emphasis on data, monitoring, surveillance, science, innovation, and evidence-based decision making, which I support, and I assume this would include research into the ecology of pest species to understand how they spread and the most effective means of controlling them. Would that be right?
So it's not additional work. I think it's more recognition of what we're already doing. So we're investing with councils across the country to get that sort of data and look at climate change impacts. So
Just a few minutes ago, Councillor Gibson said we should turn up at the border with all of our guns blazing to control wallabies, but I suggest that if we understand them more and find out more about their behaviour and how to manage them better, that might be a more effective strategy. So we need to do that with other people. So I'm just hoping that that last bullet point there does include things like research into the ecology of the species so we understand them better and we can then manage them better.
I think the tie-in between biosecurity and science needs to be strengthened, or it needs to have that. And we've done some work around marine environments, things like that, specifically to our marine environments. And so that's a report that's been done. So again, it just means we fully agree, and maybe we hopefully it's emphasised enough in there that, you know, good decisions is made on good information, basically.
Thank you. Councillor Roy.
Well, there's anecdotal evidence Wensels and West Otago are now actually shooting wallabies. So they're already across. If that's true, they're already across the Clutha. Now, what we need to know is there any substance to that comment, and then develop some strategies around stopping them going any further. They're already probably across the Clutha. So we need to know if there's substance to that and what's happening to prevent them going any further.
And take them out of the air.
Maybe that's an action point. I can get Dave to bring back some information if you want something specifically on it. There is a lot of work. I was working for Mackenzie District, and we were doing a lot of work on wallabies there, and night fly and heat sensing, and the numbers you just wouldn't believe in actual fact that you can't see with the eye, but certainly. So the technology they're using, and that's why I think that last submission is the only good wallabies a dead wallaby or whatever. It's not quite what it said, but it said something like that.
I've got a good recipe.
Thank you, Stuart.
We have a plant called the taupata that seems to be becoming abundant in Southland. Now, it's a native plant. It's recognised as a native to New Zealand, so it's supposedly protected, but it's not endemic to Murihiku. However, it's starting to saturate. For me personally, it's the Titi Islands, but it's starting to, if you have a look around, European name, the correct name for it, we refer to as taupata. And is there opportunity for the review of the biosecurity strategy that those things might be recognised as pests along the way in certain areas, because as climate change happens, we're going to start to get more and more of this. And so, as I say, this particular plant, although it's native and endemic to the north, it's slowly coming into the south. It's actually strangling, starting to strangle around our bush locally. So, how do we say, are we going to be looking at that opportunity to declare those plant species best?
So we're looking forward to meeting with you and the administrative body again about taupata and getting an update on that. I think this strategy is where we sort of want to capture those sort of things and finding the best mechanisms for addressing these issues. So it might not be a real that TA approach.
That's only one plant, isn't it? But
yeah.
Others probably coming along. Killer.
Next opportunities there around the regional pest management plan, which we are in reviewing at the moment. And so, you know, that evolves over time, and I think it does show why you need to review that document regularly and review it in partnership with our neighbours as well. There's lots of things spread from the north down south. So what they do will influence what we have to do as a reaction. So,
Councillor Morrison. Oh, sorry, Stuart.
I was just going to say, I think that plant was originally brought in as a hedgerow or some such thing, and it's just gradually gone out and about.
Councillor Morrison.
Two quick questions in anticipation of trying to future-proof stuff that we're doing now to survive local government amalgamation over the next few years. And the answer to both these questions might be no, but the question was, can we change this to read the Southland biosecurity strategy, or must it be the Environment Southland biosecurity strategy?
We've chosen to have it as the Environment Southland strategy because we haven't done the external consultation and engagement with partners, but I mean, we are probably through the RPMP review.
That might make it more palatable 3 years hence. When the other one is 2025, we're now in 2026. Are we constrained to label it 2025, or could we make it 2026?
So this strategy is sort of a flow on from the previous one. So we've left it at 2025 so that there isn't a gap.
There are 4 recommendations there, folks, noting and endorsing the strategy. So that will then go to full council. Just have another step, Dave, or is this action?
Well, at this stage, it will be the baseline for our other work, but you actually statutorily don't need one of these, but we do believe it's a good document for you to have. And so we weren't going to go through any formal, that's why we put endorsed in there rather than adopt or recommend council adoption. But again, we would take any guidance that you feel, and maybe as brought up by Councillor Morrison, that maybe when we got to a further stage and we were confident in maybe calling it the Southland, that may be the time to adopt it or endorse it. I don't know. I'm willing to take your guidance.
Given that this is the Strategy and Policy Committee and it's our job to endorse the strategies, let's do that. So somebody like to move those recommendations, please? Thanks, Councillor Morrison, seconded Councillor Young. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, great. Policy monitor, please, 9.7. Not so much read in this one. But not. Thanks, Nicole and Shanna.
I'll present the policy monitor and just highlight a few of the key updates using the executive summary. So starting with the Emergency Management Bill, on the 5th of June, the Governance and Administration Committee had provided a final report to the House, recommending the bill to be passed with several amendments. This will be discussed in more detail later, as there is a separate report on today's agenda covering the impact assessment of the committee's recommendations. The bill will move through the remaining parliamentary stages in the coming months, and the government intends to pass the bill this term. Next, we included more detail of the Department of Conservation's proposed National Conservation Policy Statement and monitor. The proposed policy statement would establish a new national planning framework for conservation land, including visitor zoning, activity classifications, and standardised concession settings. Consultation on the draft NCPS closes on August 2nd. The final item we flagged is the Local Government Port Companies Accountability Amendment Bill, introduced on the 22nd of June. In simple terms, the bill would increase transparency and accountability requirements for port companies, including bringing them under parts of the GOIMA, the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act, and introduces additional social and environmental responsibility obligations. The policy team are simply monitoring the progression of this bill and any implications it may have for local government and port governments. There has also been an additional update since this policy monitor was finalised. The Game Animal Council Amendment Bill relating to birds of special interest had assented on June 30th. The legislation will provide the framework for birds of special interest within national parks. The Minister for Hunting and Fishing will be making decisions on the designation of the Fiordland Wapiti as a herd of special interest in the near future, as well as the seeker in the North Island. Now I'll hand over to Sha.
In addition to what was just shared, I'd like to make some more comments on the major pieces of national policy changes. So for resource management reform, we are aware we are awaiting the release of the Select Committee's report, which has been delayed by a month to the 20th of July. So once that report comes out, we start to engage in a quick preliminary analysis and come back to you with information about the key matters contained in that report. And the enactment of the Planning Act and the Natural Environment Act is expected later in the year, after the national election. In the climate change space, we are anticipating that amendment to the Climate Change Response Act will become available for review later in the year. Again, it's not certain about, the timing is not certain, but it could be Q3, so we will keep you informed about that as we go. A relevant matter in the climate change space is passing the current process around the Climate Change Response Tort Liability Amendment Bill. That is the government's response to one of the court cases that is trying to prevent people, company, or the Crown for being sued over the effects of greenhouse emissions. Yes, greenhouse gas emissions. Relating to rates capping bill, we are expecting that the bill will be released sometime in 2026. It could be Q3, so that's something else that we are closely monitoring and will keep updated on that progress. Another matter that has been of relatively high interest to this council has been the Regulatory Standards Act. So we are aware that some of the staff members have attended a session organized by the Ministry of Regulation, during which some practical guidance has been provided. We are expecting to progress the necessary work in collaboration with the ministry and perhaps the other councils who are needing to implement the requirements in relation to supply. And I'd like to pass it back to the chair unless Marcus has any additional comments to make.
So I have a permission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You just, it was probably nothing thing, but I guess my question was the local government companies accountability. Is there any contradictions or entanglements being that they are a listed company and direction plays out?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's a great question. I'm not sure the exact detail of how that may play out. Companies, but we can do some better work on that.
I think definitely. Councillor Matheson.
So we already asked that question, Scott Hamilton. And he felt that they already have that reporting framework in place because they actually are a listed company. And he said there'll be some, potentially some areas where they, he hadn't had a look at it in depth, that there is some areas where perhaps they can't or they shouldn't be reporting to the expectations. Might be by the government that they do. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just ask, what do we think the Regulatory Standards Act will mean for Environment Southland? Does that mean that if we're providing submissions, will we have more evidence from government to engage with? Or, as I understand, is this was it a consistency statement now? It must accompany legislation that moves through Parliament. Or are we still exploring what that means?
Chair, I appreciate Councillor Morrison's focus on the potential benefits of the introduction of the system as opposed to just the risks. So we are still awaiting to see how those requirements will pan out in terms of actual implementation.
Anybody else? I would like to move the recommendation, please. Thank you, Councillor Roy. Thank you, Councillor Matheson. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Great. Thank you. Thanks, team. Nicole's going to stay because it's the impact assessment of the emergency management bill, item 9.8. Thanks, Nicole.
This report assesses the extent to which Environment Southland's submission on the emergency management bill is reflected in the Select Committee's recommended amendments to the bill. So thinking back to our submission, we had supported the overall intent of the bill but sought a number of refinements to better reflect regional realities, particularly around flood risk management, governance, iwi engagement, funding, and managing emergencies before a formal declaration is made. Overall, we consider that Environment Southland's influence on the Select Committee's report to be moderate, and several of our key submission themes are reflected in the committee's recommendations. Although it's difficult to directly attribute individual changes to our submission, given there were over 300 submissions on the bill and significant alignment across the local government sector. The strongest area of influence relates to system integration and planning alignment. The committee has strengthened links between emergency management planning and council long-term plans, and clarified that emergency management responsibilities can be delivered through other legislation where appropriate. Staff consider these some of the most significant changes in the bill. In practical terms, they should help ensure emergency management is considered much earlier in council planning and investment decisions, rather than being treated as a separate work stream. There were also a number of areas of what we have assessed as moderate influence. These include stronger engagement requirements with iwi and communities, greater flexibility for emergency management committees to bring in additional expertise, and extended liability protections for precautionary actions taken before a formal emergency declaration. However, there are several matters from our submission that were only partially reflected or not reflected in the committee report. These include our recommendation to explicitly recognise flood protection infrastructure as essential infrastructure, concerns around the long-term funding model for emergency management, recognition of the professional role of group officers, and greater clarity around responsibilities during the pre-declaration phase of an emergency. While some progress was made on liability protections, many of these issues have effectively been deferred to future implementation, guidance, or policy work. It's important to note that this assessment is still provisional. The bill has not yet passed all remaining parliamentary stages and may still be amended before the law. So the final extent of Environment Southland's influence won't be known until the legislation is enacted.
Thanks, Nicole.
Just, Madam Chair, just adding one point in relation to the flood management being considered as essential infrastructure. I guess from a staff perspective, we considered that in certain situations, the infrastructure from flood infrastructure, such as flood banks, prevents impact on significant other infrastructure within communities and towns and cell networks and three waters and roading and infrastructure. So setting the tone right at the flood infrastructure, calling flood banks infrastructure, means that the importance of that would protect subsequent infrastructure behind those assets as well. So we're trying to, I guess, make that connection through that process, but seems not to have made it through to the update from the Select Committee.
Questions? Councillor Morrison?
Just an observation, the second reading of the bill gives us a better feel for the shape of the thing that will emerge. I just want to flag that it is likely to lift the bar in terms of some things that are expected from Southland emergency management, and that may translate to things that are visible in the LTP considerations in the next few months. I know that our emergency manager is currently considering what this means, what are the implications for Southland, and once it becomes legislation, we'll be in a far better position to talk to that. But a couple of the things that are signalled is that preparing for resilience ahead of emergencies, and also making sure that we have a far more predictable or standard recovery capability. Both of those things are going to suggest increased investment in the system at different points. So I'm just flagging that there is a cost associated with the lift in expectations accompanying this particular bill.
Any other comments? Somebody like to move the recommendation then, thanks. Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Seconded Councillor Rodway. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Breach. Thanks, Dean. Comforting to know that they do listen, sort of. And 9.9 strategy, policy and regional planning update. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here on behalf of Liz Jeffries to talk to the regional planning part of the update. In terms of the key items from the update, the navigation safety bylaw Consultation is open until Sunday in relation to the 10 proposed speed uplifted areas. The latest figure on submissions is that we've had 60 submissions in so far. On the appeals to the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan, since preparing this agenda item, we've had a decision through from the High Court on the Rule 78 appeal, which is the rule for weed and sediment removal for drainage maintenance. So previously, the Environment Court had approved the 2018 decisions version of Rule 78 and also introduced a new Rule 78A, which was specific to local authorities. These decisions by the Environment Court had been appealed to the High Court on questions of law. Environment Southland had been working with the other parties involved to reach agreement in principle on wording for Rule 78. The High Court recognised this work and described it as a lengthy and commendable period of consultation between the parties. The High Court's role was focused on the questions of law, and it found that the Environment Court had erred. This means that the proceedings are sent back to the Environment Court to be reconsidered in light of the High Court's findings. And I won't get into the details because it's a matter before the court, but it's the Environment Court that will consider the agreement reached between the parties. In terms of the plan modification, the investigation reports are still working their way through the ministry's internal process, but we are expecting to have them through with the outcome of that investigation any day. Natural hazards work continues to keep getting busier. We've had 150 requests to the end of June this calendar year, compared to 116 requests over the same period last year. These inquiries are also becoming more complex, which means that more time is being taken to respond to them. There's also a meeting that's being set up with staff from the territorial authorities and local planning consultants to discuss implementation of the National Policy Statement for Natural Hazards. On the discharge agreements, engagement is underway with Southport and the New Zealand Aluminium Smelter on their discharge agreements under the Regional Coastal Plan, as the current agreements expire at the end of September this year. And a paper will be coming to the next SNP meeting with more detail, including on the environmental management plans being prepared. The Gore District Plan Review, Environment Southland has joined the groundswell appeal to the Gore District Plan as a Section 274 party. Our focus is on the natural hazard provisions to ensure that our Southland Regional Policy Statement is upheld. And finally, on spatial planning, work is continuing to set up the foundations for the regional spatial plan, which will be prepared under the new planning system. This includes reviewing the evidence gap analysis that was previously done and establishing the program structure and governance arrangements. The select committee process for the planning bill is now expected to report back on the 20th of July. And until we have the legislation in place, the program is focused on setting foundations so that the region is ready to formally start the spatial plan once we have certainty over the requirements.
Thank you. Quick question from me. Could you just remind us all what the, if you can, what the plan modification requests were?
Yes, so that was under Section 360I of the Resource Management Act, and there were requests on 3 different topics that were sent to the Minister to be able to change the Southland Water and Land Plan. They related to Appendix N on the farm plans, to Rule 66 in relation to gravel and river management, and to a few different rules in the plan, but in relation to positive action, including enabling construction of wetlands.
Okay, so we're waiting.
Yes, we're waiting, but we
some more.
We are expecting to hear imminently.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Gibson.
Is that enabling wetlands under given framing?
So it's a change to the rules in the plan to provide as a permitted activity for various types of work constructing wetlands. So still subject to conditions, but allowing for more works to be undertaken than would be allowed by the plans at the moment.
That'll be through by tomorrow.
No, we're expecting to hear soon. We don't have a specific date, but soon.
Tomorrow never comes. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, could I ask could you just elaborate a little bit on what the side was you approached the Minister about?
Yes, through you, Chair. It's in relation to Rule 66, which is maintenance of structures, and the changes to the role is enabling some removal from gravel under particular circumstances in order to provide preemptive protection of the structures, as opposed to after there is a specific maintenance need that has arisen. So it's looking more preemptively.
Thank you for that.
Councillors, any other questions? Somebody like to move, please? Thanks, Councillor Evans, seconded Councillor Hodson. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Agreed. And the very weighty 9.10 item. Somebody like to move that we receive the update? Thank you, Councillor Roy, seconded Councillor Matheson. All those in favour, please say aye.
I think we should discuss this before we go.
Yeah. I was having a moment of discussion. No question. And there is no public excluded section for us today, so that brings us to the end of the meeting, and I'm going to be really rude once again and ask Stuart to close for us. Fine.
Kia ora koutou, he karakia mutu a tēnei hui e tau, tātou katoa kia hoi, o te tātou araki e karaiti, me tāra ki katoa, e te whiwhinga kahitanga ki te wairo tapu aki. Kia ora.
Stuart, thank you. That brings the meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everybody.
A reminder, at 1:30 is the next activity, which is a briefing.
A briefing. Thank you. Just get yourselves offline before you start talking about what's for lunch.
Brief.